When you're ready.
How does urbanization force adaptations, and what consequences does it have on species who live there? In this presentation, I'll be discussing the Bender article entitled Urban Evolution, How Species Adapt to Survive in Cities, and the TED Talk by Watson entitled How to Build a Resilient Future Using Ancient Wisdom. In recent years, urbanization has drastically increased. This has led to an increase in temperature, pollution, and pesticide use in these areas. This has given drastically different environments than species are used to living in. These species include Daphnia magna, peppered moths, rats, and people. It is important to understand how species adapt to these environments in order to properly contextualize what is happening to these species and what might happen to species that have not yet adapted to these environments. And then we'll be examining why this matters for us as a species and what we can do to either curb or accelerate this adaptation depending on whether it is beneficial or detrimental to the populations that live here. Daphnia magna. In experiments by the Institute of Nature and Forest in Belgium, they found that within 3 generations, they have developed a smaller size, or increased resilience to heat, and increased resistance to pesticides. This is significant because it is an example of how species can very quickly adapt to adjust to the new urban environments and how they can succeed in these environments without experiencing any difficulties. In contrast to this, you have species like the peppered moth, who in the 1800s, Britain was rapidly industrializing, and this changed their traditional color of white and black to a solid black. And this is due to the heavy amount of coal that was used in the region, coating many surfaces. This caused a great amount of suffering to the peppered moth because it ruined their natural camouflage, which led to the decimation of most of their population. However, they did bounce back through their adaptations and resilience. Then you have creatures like the rats in New York City and other urban environments, which have actually learned to exploit the new advantages of the terrain given to them. This can include things like human waste products, where they have evolved to have smaller teeth to better chew and digest the food sources that they're finding with the human waste. This is caused by genetic drift in the case of the rats. This is when a parent population shown here is then cut, and then a small portion of it is cut off from the population over here, and then these 2 purple dots represent favorable traits. As the generations proceed, the favorable traits outweigh the non-favorable traits, and then they lose a certain amount of biodiversity. This can either be detrimental or beneficial to the population at large. While biodiversity is generally considered a good thing, it can be strengthened by losing the unnecessary traits and more specializing the population to their specific environments, allowing them to better survive in their newfound environment, which would be urban civilizations. Then that brings us to Calcutta, which is a very unique case in which a population has adapted to their urban environment by actually reverting back to their ancient techniques of fish farming in the wetlands. This is because with the rapid urbanization in Calcutta, the people have had an excess amount of waste, and due to there being no formal methods of sewer sanitization in the city, a lot of it is put out into the marshlands, which are then cultivated by fish farmers who use algae to break down the waste, and then the fish eat the algae. However, in recent years, this has come under threat because of the rapid urbanization consuming the marshlands. This presents 2 very lethal combinations of the marshlands receding and the urban environment growing, making waste even higher than it was before and less area to manage the waste. And this matters because this trend will only get more dangerous over time. As more urban environments grow, the waste will grow, the temperatures will increase, and it will force adaptations on a mass scale. While some species like Daphnia magna and rats will learn to better live in their environments, there will be many species who are caught like the peppered moths, who then have their species almost decimated by the changing urban environments that they now find themselves living in. So I propose that we slow down our urbanization and find better ways to, firstly, get rid of our waste. This could be through methods like solar farms or wind farms where we just simply produce less waste, and to sort of allow our species that are living in these environments already to further adapt without having drastic changes like the peppered moth experience that allowed their population to be attacked by predators.
Okay. All right, Chris, a couple of questions. How did your research question evolve as you moved through the process?
At the very start, I wanted to focus specifically on the Daphnia. This is because I found that their case was very interesting and that there was a lot of research on them. But as I explored more, I found that there was also research done on rats and the peppered moth. And I found that their research was very applicable to the presentation at large because it showed the different ways that species can adapt to survive in these environments.
Okay, thank you. What additional questions emerged from your research, and why are they important?
One additional question would be how genetic drift has affected human populations over time. Because as I showed how they've responded to urbanization, it ignores the factor of genetic drift, and this could be, I didn't find any information on this topic as there hasn't been a whole lot of research done on it, but I would like to see how human populations were affected by this.
Okay, thank you. Another round of applause.